This is Born Strategist, and in this video, I'm going to be asking you, as well as myself, the following question. Striker versus Sunbreaker. Which do you prefer? Now, obviously, I'm referring to the Striker subclass as well as the Sunbreaker subclass of the Titan. And when you compare the two, they both have their pros and cons. And it was obviously designed that way to kind of give you an incentive to use one over the other, depending on the game modes that you're playing. Now, generally speaking, if I'm going to go ahead and play Control, I would probably prefer the Sunbreaker more so than the Striker, simply because, well, he's got those incineration grenades, which is great for dispatching, large clusters of enemies. And then you have the hammer, which means you can kind of gain some ground and maneuver a little bit more than you could with the Sunbreaker, simply because, it's not a one-shot only deal, and you could throw multiple hammers. Now, when I play Trials of Osiris, I would probably prefer to utilize the Striker simply because, there's really no time for an animation like you would when you activate a Sunbreaker super. And as a result, you want something that's a little bit more instantaneous and something that's going to ensure a kill in a very fast environment. Now, aside from that, you obviously have the flash grenades, which are very versatile, but they don't deal a lot of damage, and they don't really blind people for that long either. So that's something that you may want to consider when utilizing a striker subclass. Now, aside from that, they have the lightning grenades, but remember, those lightning grenades aren't going to be all that useful on maps that have rounded walls or no walls whatsoever, at least within the immediate vicinity of your lightning grenades. So it's kind of situational, so they're not going to be all that useful in wide open environments. Now, aside from that, you also have shoulder charge, which is great for control matches when you always have a lot of enemies to choose from, but they may not necessarily be all that effective if you're going up against a really competitive team in Trials of Osiris, simply because they may anticipate that sort of thing, or probably gun you down with a doctrine, or counter you with a shotgun, or whatever. So you always have to play accordingly and make sure that you may want to hold back and not go running around trying to look for the next nearest shoulder charge target. Now, aside from shoulder charge, you do have another option in the form of Juggernaut. Now, that actually is somewhat beneficial if you can master the art of running and gunning with a shotgun, meaning that you essentially just run up to somebody and utilize the shield to prevent them from killing you so you can get close enough to finish them off with a shotgun blast. And it's a good little strategy to use, but I wouldn't recommend that sort of tactic if you're playing in Trials of Osiris game mode, simply because, well, they're probably going to be working together and they're probably going to gun you down pretty quickly, and there's only so much punishment that shield can take. So it's not something I would recommend. But if you're playing in a control match, then shoulder charge or Juggernaut would probably be very useful, especially if you have a lot of enemies to choose from. Now, aside from that, you also have, the Sunbreaker once again, who does have the ability to regenerate health when he destroys somebody or specifically kills somebody with one of his flame abilities. So that could be an incineration grenade, or that could be one of his hammers, or, it could be a melee attack. And as a result, it's really good because you can go ahead and regenerate your health. But the Striker Titan also has that as well if you unlock that particular perk. But it's really heavily dependent on your playstyle. Now, if you're more of a running gunner, then obviously the Striker is going to be something that you're going to want to use more so than the Sunbreaker. Now, the Sunbreaker does have the potential to be a close quarters, combat type character, but the Striker Titan is just a better option for that. And if I was to be running and gunning with a shotgun and being very aggressive, then obviously I would choose a Striker more so than the Sunbreaker. Now, as far as the Sunbreaker is concerned, I really like him for mid-range aggression or as a support character, simply because the incineration grenades. And when you combine that with the armamentarium, you can double up on those little burning bastards, and they do a really good job of weakening or killing targets. Now, since you see so many Sun Singers in the Trials of Osiris, it wouldn't be a bad idea to utilize a Sun-breaking Titan in the Trials of Osiris, simply because you could use Armamentarium to give you the additional grenade. And I would actually recommend that. If you're running maybe like one Warlock, one Titan, and one Hunter, and you have to choose, well, which characters are going to be fast res and which ones aren't, Well, I would recommend that you're going to go ahead and utilize the Warlock and the Hunter with the Crest of Alpha Lupe, or the, Greek helmet, or the hell it's called for the Warlock, simply because, well, you can give the Armamentarium to the Titan so you can double up on those incineration grenades. Now, it's a pretty good strategy, especially if you want to go ahead and maximize the amount of burn damage you can deal. But at the same time, you also have to take into consideration maybe you want to go with something else. Or maybe you want to go ahead and utilize another character that could benefit from another exotic item that would be more beneficial than the Armamentarium. But to be honest with you, I really don't think too many other exotic items would be all that great when compared to the Armamentarium, simply because the incineration grenades that the Sunbreaker has are by far more versatile. Now, let's get on to the melee portion of this video. And I'll be the first one to say that the melees for these particular characters, or for these particular subclasses of the Titan, suck. Okay? And the reason why I say that is, they just don't have any additional reach when compared to like the Blade Dancer or the Sun Singer, because they do have some additional reach, okay? And that's great. I like the fact that those characters have that reach, and I'm very appreciative of that reach simply because, they're very, very effective when you're trying to, melee targets attempting to flee from you. Now, with the Striker, Sunbreaker, and even the Defender for that matter, you don't have that additional reach. Granted, you do gain some form of bonus, like for example, the Striker subclass can go ahead and regenerate its health, to where the Sunbreaker can go ahead and do some burning damage, for example. It just depends on what you pick. But those are, great abilities. And if I had to choose which one I would prefer more so than the other, I would definitely have to say that I prefer the burning ability if you, go that route, the Sunbreaker, for his melee attack, simply because it deals more damage over time and gives you a better chance of securing a kill, even if you manage to, fail to find the target or they killed you in the process of that melee. Now, with that said, the Striker melee does have the benefit of regenerating your health, as does the Sunbreaker's melee. But the Sunbreaker's melee does the additional damage over time. Simply put, I would probably prefer the damage over time as well as the regeneration ability over the Striker's melee, which doesn't really have any type of additional burn damage. Now, obviously, not every single subclass could have damage over time, okay? But the thing is that the Striker doesn't necessarily need it because he has a tendency to make up for it with having a very fast and quick and massive blast radius as far as the, Fist of Havoc is concerned. And then on top of that, you do have the shoulder charge, and I love the shoulder charge. Now, that does make up for it. And for that very reason, I always have a hard time trying to decide between which character I'm going to use. Now, whether you do use the shoulder charge as an offensive maneuver against an opposing player, or whether you decide to go ahead and use it as a way to help better position yourself around the map by being able to dart in different directions or whatever it may be, it's a great character to choose from. And if I'm going to be playing Trials of Osiris, rest assured I'm going to be utilizing that Striker subclass. Now, if I'm going to be the Sunbreaker, then generally I'm going to utilize the Sunbreaker in control-based game modes because it's very effective and I can manage to maneuver around and look for targets that may attempt to flee my position. Because, truth be told, the Sunbreaker is a great character class for trying to track down targets that may attempt to flee from your position, to whereas the Striker subclass may have a very difficult time trying to get, multi-kills, especially if you're going up against a team of very smart players that tend to, spread out and flank. But either way, you can't go wrong control with either a Sunbreaker or a Striker. And the same thing goes for Trials of Osiris. You don't have to use the Striker if you don't want to use the Striker, and the Sunbreaker should do you a great deal of benefit, especially if you're pairing up with the Armamentarium and utilizing incineration grenades. It's just a good way to go if you're using that subclass. With that said, what's your thoughts? What's your opinions? Which do you prefer? Let me know below. Until next time, thanks for watching. And for more objective reviews, strategy guides, commentaries, and more, stay tuned to this channel.